You emphasize that willpower is never enough.
I mean, willpower is a nice concept.
Just try harder.
And I'm all in favor of like using your willpower. But like, let's all be honest. If it was easy as willpower, ADHD wouldn't exist. Diets wouldn't exist. None of us would have to go to the dentist because we'd be brushing our teeth and flossing 4 times a day. And so like this thing of relying on willpower, it either shows a lack of understanding of just in general human nature, but definitely about ADHD, right? That it's not just about trying harder or caring more. Rather, it's about making smarter choices beforehand. If you're an alcoholic, don't go to the bar. If Doritos call to you, don't buy them. The better strategies are the ones that make it easier to do the right thing at the right time and place. Don't rely on your willpower to do more than it can do.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Successful with ADHD, where we talk real life with real ADHD. And I'm your host, Brooke, ADHD coach, business owner, and fellow human, trying to get through the week with a little grace, a little humor, and some serious strategy. So today, I'm thrilled to introduce someone who has been a rock star in the ADHD world for years, Dr. Ari Tuckman. So if you've ever Googled anything about ADHD productivity, you've probably stumbled across his name, and for a good reason. So Ari is a psychologist, an author, and a speaker who's been helping ADHD adults understand themselves better and get things done for over 25 years. Do I have that correct?
Yeah. Time moves.
Time moves. And for us ADHDers, it happens in ways that we never imagined. And Ari is the author of several books, including one that we're going to be talking about and diving into today, ADHD Productivity Manual. So what I love so far about Ari's book is that it's smart, evidence-based, and totally down to earth. And he gets what it means to live with ADHD in the real world, with dishes in the sink, 47 open browser tabs, and your brain saying, let's just check one more thing first. So today we're diving into why productivity is so tricky with ADHD, what really gets in our way, and how we can bridge the gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. So whether you're walking the dog, folding laundry, or procrastinating on that email you've been avoiding, this one's for you. So Ari, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm glad to be talking about this stuff.
Absolutely. So I first met Ari, I think 5 years ago or 6 years ago at the ADHD conference. And I was always impressed by your talks and just like your general personality. It's very authentic, humble. You always have something new and exciting to talk about at the conferences. So really looking forward to this talk.
Good. Yeah. I always love the conference. It's so great. Awesome people, lots of good stuff going on. So yeah, big fan.
Yeah. So you say in your book, it's not another ADHD book. So why do you think people are still searching for that one thing when it comes to ADHD productivity with all these other ADHD productivity books?
Yeah. I mean, I think the hard truth of it is like productivity is complicated. Like there's so many things that affect whether you actually get something done or if you get kind of stuck along the way. And, some of it's just sort of human imperfection and fallibility that anybody might struggle with. But ADHD definitely adds a few of its own wrinkles. And, really what I do in real life is I sit in my office, I meet with clients, and I've been, focused on mostly adults with ADHD for more than 25 years. I've had tons and tons of conversations about getting things done, or probably more about not getting things done. And, it's taught me a lot about all the different things that can get in the way. And, so on the one hand, I think that's good news because it means if you felt frustrated about why can't I figure this out, God damn it, right? This is why, right? Because it isn't easy, so don't beat yourself up on it. But also it helps us begin to narrow down like what exactly in this situation is getting stuck. Like where am I, what's happening? What do I need to do different? Because like the better you understand what the problem is, the more effective you can be in picking the right solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you just say, I have trouble with organization or I have trouble with time management, well, what part of time management and what's getting in the way of your time management
Mhm.
specifically? I love that. Yes. And that's really where, coaching comes in and where your services come in, to ask those specific questions as well, because it's not a
Yeah.
one size fits all solution.
No, it isn't. It isn't. And, this is also why, I don't know, I have a little bit of a pet peeve, some of this stuff like, the top 5 hacks that will, I don't know what they're going to
Change your
do,
life.
but yeah, but they won't. Whatever it is they're going to do, they're not going to do. So like anything that says like transformational or life changing or revolutionary, or like it isn't. It just isn't. Like there's very little in life that's transformational. But, a little bit better is not a great, sexy sales pitch it's not going to, that post isn't going to explode. So,
Yes.
but that's fine. I mean, it's not about the flash. It's about actually doing the things that are really going to be helpful and knowing yourself well and learning from the people who've come before you and figuring out like, what are the strategies that are really going to make the difference for you?
Mm. It's funny when you were saying transformational, life changing, those being sexy, just really funny detour here. I was having a discovery call the other day with a client and I dropped the price and she goes, "Oh, that's it?" I said, "What do you mean that's it?" She goes, "I just met with someone before you who has a coaching program for 6 weeks and it's 3 sessions a week for 3 hours. So it's a total of 18 hours. And my time blindness and procrastination will be gone forever."
So that
Guaranteed.
is a lie. Like
guaranteed. 50 grand.
The only thing I can guarantee you is you're not getting your money back. Like that is like an irresponsible fraud. Like I'm just going to really kind of call bullshit here. Like, first of all, absolutely no way. There's 100% no possibility that is going to be as effective. Like guaranteed, absolutely not, never going to happen. So this person is either an absolute liar and has no conscience, or they're a fool who doesn't understand that. Forget ADHD, just any human behavior. I would never guarantee anything,
course.
Right? Like, so it's patently ridiculous, but to charge $50,000 is absolutely fraudulent. Like that is a complete scam. And like
100%.
That's the stuff that makes me crazy, because the thing is, like, nobody needs more failures. Nobody needs another thing to feel terrible about. I just sort of feel like in general, anyone who forces you to sign up for these big fat packages, like already that's a red flag. Like if you're good at what you do, people will continue to come. You don't need to force them to prepay for things that they're probably not going to use all of.
Yes. Thank you. And that's what really gives coaching and the industry such a bad name. I don't care if it's 50 grand, if it's $1 million or $1, right? 50 grand's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But
yeah,
if you promise that you're going to cure procrastination, like I don't even think Tony Robbins has done that as a non-ADHD human, right? Like that's just absurd.
Like, it's ridiculous.
Red flag, red flag, red flag. So if you are meeting with someone and they say that, run.
Yes. Ugh, God.
So you emphasize that willpower is never enough. How do you see this play out in your own life or with your clients?
I mean, willpower is a nice concept, and I'm all in favor of
just
like
try harder.
Using your willpower. But like, let's all be honest. If it was easy as willpower, ADHD wouldn't exist. Diets wouldn't exist, right? Every gym would be bursting at the seams with everybody in there. None of us would have to go to the dentist because we'd be brushing our teeth and flossing 4 times a day. And, nobody's doing that. So like this thing of relying on willpower, it either shows a lack of understanding of just in general human nature, but definitely about ADHD, right? That it's not just about trying harder or caring more. Rather, it's about kind of, I don't know, it's about making smarter choices beforehand. I mean, it's kind of like the classic example, right? If you're an alcoholic, don't go to the bar. Right? Mm-hmm. If you are in the bar, you're a million times more likely to drink. or if Doritos are just, they call to you, right? Like, don't buy them. Like, don't even walk down that aisle in the supermarket, right? Like, don't rely on your willpower to do more than it can do. So, the better strategies are the ones that make it easier to do the right thing at the right time and place, that we set it up beforehand rather than hoping that somehow things are going to work out in the moment.
Can you give me some examples of how someone like an alcoholic or, someone with ADHD who's struggling with brushing their teeth, how do you set that up beforehand for success?
Yeah. So, if we take the brushing your teeth example, sometimes it's just simple things, but it's like, where is your toothbrush? Right. And, if you have like a partner who's like, oh no, the counter's too crowded, we need to put things away. I mean, maybe, but also if you put it away, you might as well throw it away because I won't remember to do it. Yeah. So, honey, those are your two options. What do we want to do here? All right. So maybe there's a bit of like, I need to put it there. Maybe it's even silly things like, I need to find a toothpaste I really like, because maybe that little bit of or like, I kind of don't like this toothpaste. It's just going to make you slightly less likely to want to do it. It may also be a thing of maybe we need to rewind the tape. Like, when are you actually going up to bed? If you're going up too late, it's less likely that you're going to brush your teeth or do all the extra things. So maybe that's really where this story begins. Or maybe it's sort of a thing of every time you don't feel like brushing your teeth, to sort of remind yourself, sort of hold in mind vividly, like, so what does it feel like in the dentist chair when they're like, this is just going to hurt a little, and then, you get hit with a shot and then they're like, kind of grinding away. And you're like, I don't like that. Right. So like really holding in mind, that is what I'm doing here. Okay, I'm going to brush my teeth. But even things like, and this is sort of a thing I've been recommending of late, just making a stupid bet, so something like, probably with your partner, but, or it could be one of your kids or something, but like, if I brush my teeth every day, then some silly thing. If I don't brush my teeth every day, then this thing instead. Right.
Yeah.
And playful,
incentivize with money. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of. And it just kind of playful, stupid, silly, fun, nothing like, you have to get like a tattoo on your face or anything, but like, some sort of a something that just like cranks up a little bit more motivation on it.
Yeah. This is interesting. So first you mentioned like, reducing the friction, right? So, you talk about object permanence and how we have a hard time with ADHD with that. So, right, you don't have the toothbrush on your counter, you're going to forget about it, right? So it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And then the making it fun and more encouraging with toothpaste that you actually like if you were to do toothbrushing with a toddler. I do that with my 3-year-old. She loves the strawberry flavored toothpaste and she actually enjoys eating it too. But you know what? It's safe in small doses.
Fine.
So we're going to go with it, right?
Take the win.
Right. But then you also talk about these avoidance goals, right? What is the worst, like what will happen if you don't, right? And I know you're, in psychology, right? So we talk about avoidance goals and goals that motivate us as well. And so many people out there are like, oh no, you shouldn't have these avoidance goals because that's not going to give you long-term solutions. Sure. But here you are, and I agree with you. It's like, well, what will happen if you don't do that? You might lose your tooth, and you might have more drilling, and you might have to spend thousands of dollars in the process of doing that. So talk to me a little bit, since you went there, about avoidance goals and how you use that with your clients.
And I think it's a really good point because, and this is definitely something I bang on this drum a lot, and definitely in the new book, but also elsewhere, that, the problem, if you're not managing your ADHD well, or just whatever, you're not managing your life well somehow, too much of life becomes about avoiding negative outcomes, right? Which is motivating to a point, but the problem is, avoiding negative outcomes only takes you from negative to zero. It doesn't actually add positives. It doesn't make life better, which again, like it is somewhat motivating, but it's not like super motivating. You're not bringing your very best when it's just about kind of, dodging the bullet. So, when it comes to managing your ADHD or productivity in general, it's really about like, what does a good life look like? What does a meaningful, interesting, satisfying life look like to me? Not perfect, but like, what is a good life to me at this sort of moment in my life, And from there, kind of working backwards, so I don't like getting cavities filled. Like it's motivating, but it is, like you said, it's a negative. It's avoiding the negative. Some positives on this might be something like, I like it when I get into bed knowing I brushed my teeth. Like I feel good about myself for having done this thing. And even if nobody else knows, I know, like to me, this is something that's important.
Yeah.
Or, maybe, I don't know, if you kind of kiss your spouse goodnight, that you're going to get a more positive response rather than a negative. Maybe that's part of the motivation. Or, I mean, it's definitely
depends
like,
how long you've been with them.
yeah, exactly. But like, there's definitely a lot of things in life that feel just too much about avoiding the negatives. So sometimes you need to stretch a bit or be a little bit more sort of intangible about what is it that's positive? How am I making my life better? How am I using my own agency to make choices here?
Love that. So yeah, it's a mixture. It's not like an all or nothing, right? Like we tend to go towards with ADHD. It's okay, let's do some motivation. And sometimes we do need some avoidance and, goals in there as well when we can't find the motivation. So you mentioned that in order to have a good life, right? We want to have a good life, not just a productive one. But what would you say a good life for someone with ADHD look like?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it all depends on the individual, right? Like for you, what does a meaningful life look like? But I think what I would say in general, and again, like I beat on this drum a lot, is absolutely there are benefits to being more on top of your ADHD and being more effective and being more efficient at getting things done, right? Like there's absolutely tangible benefits that come from that. And also there comes a point where maybe productive is productive enough, that you can work 20 hours a day and boy, are you productive, I guess, although at some point, that line starts to go the other way. But yeah.
Diminishing returns, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. But is that the life you want to live, right? So part of this is to think about, like, how productive do I really want to be? Like, what do I get from it? What is important to me? Everything has a cost. If I do this, I'm not doing other things. So, at this moment in my life, what am I trying to do here? So some of this is sort of getting clear within ourselves about it. Some of it also is, how do I handle this in terms of other people's expectations for me? So obviously a romantic partner or family members are going to have opinions about what you do. Coworkers and bosses and maybe neighbors and friends and, everybody's got an opinion. Opinions are easy. But how much do they get to vote on what you do? How much is their happiness or unhappiness your job to fix? Like absolutely be generous, be a good person, do your share, be a team player. But at some point, like, again, maybe this is as good as it needs to be, and being able to be okay with other people having a different opinion. That's a lot easier to do if in general you feel like you're doing pretty good. If you feel like you're messing up too much and people are mad at you too much and you owe people, like you can't, it becomes another failure, not another place of like, I'm being assertive and standing up for myself here.
It's a good point. So I am a family of 5 ADHDers. My husband has severe ADHD. I have ADHD. My 2 stepsons have ADHD. My 3-year-old toddler isn't diagnosed, but extremely hyperactive.
We're all betting.
And we get she's, she's going to have ADHD. Let's just call it what it is. But
Sure.
I mean, her teacher at daycare says she's very good at climbing and running, but her fine motor skills aren't as good. I'm like, yup.
Right.
Anywho, with ADHD, we all know that like we have received so many negative messages, and we do have that rejection sensitivity, and we do feel like a failure so often. So when you say, it depends on the situation, like if someone isn't agreeing with the time that you allocate, a partner or a boss, and you already feel like a failure, you're probably going to feel like a failure. So like, how do you get out of that shame spiral of, okay, they don't agree with me. I've probably let myself and others down plenty of times. That's the story I tell myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now what?
Yeah. And the thing is, it's not just a story you tell yourself, it's also a story other people tell you.
Yep.
You didn't invent that story yourself. Especially if you've lived many years undiagnosed, untreated, not managing it well. So this question becomes much more sort of messy and complicated. There's much more sort of the shadow of history here. I'm not going to say it's a quick and easy decision, but I think it's part of the process of really sort of understanding ADHD and where you fit in the world and how do you want to be in your various relationships, which I think is a thing we all, need to sort of think about from time to time. So it's a thing of like figuring out like what are reasonable expectations? What is reasonable for me to expect of myself? What feels worth it? What doesn't? Definitely there's gender, factors into this as well in terms of, what people expect of you and what's okay to be assertive on or not. I think there's also an element, I kind of have this line, I don't want to set you up for disappointment and me up for failure. So it's sort of like don't agree to things that are probably not going to work out.
That's so good.
Because there's the hope of like, no, you should be able to do this. So just do it. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll try. And then of course it doesn't work out,
that like, overpromise and underdeliver. Yeah.
Yeah. This was doomed from the beginning. Neither of us should have believed this. So it's better to disappoint somebody earlier and to say like, look, I'm not going to be able to get you that by Thursday. Like I'm just telling you now, but that means facing their disappointment in the moment rather than fingers crossed, hoping it's going to work out, right? Somehow I'll pull it off. Wednesday night, somehow the time will matter. I'll discover the 25th hour. But like that occasional reinforcement where it does sort of work out, it does then sort of justify that like, okay, I guess, let me see what I can do. But there's also an element, apart from the like being able to feel comfortable disappointing someone in the moment, there's also the whole thing of like, do you even know what you need to do? Do you have any idea what Wednesday looks like? Because if you're like, let me think for a sec. No, I don't have anything. Right. And then you get to Wednesday, you're like, oh, turns out I have 10 things. How about that? Would have been helpful to have that in my schedule. So, like there's that part of it too, of actually having in general a good enough schedule, in general a good enough to-do list or whatever. So you even can make that informed guess about what Wednesday holds.
Yes. So a lot of work ahead of time, being proactive, getting the time management down, working with someone so you can get that system down. Then you have to have the metacognition and the forethought to be like, okay, yes, no, maybe, and really no. Or, okay, I'm going to check my schedule and actually rely on my schedule and then come back to the person and tell them what's up.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of executive functions.
It is. It definitely is. And some of it, and it might also be a thing of like, look, I can't give you an answer in this moment right now. Let me check some things and I'll get back to you. But even there's a nuance of let me check and get back to you, right? Or let me check. Does that mean I call you? Does that mean you call me? If I don't call you, does that mean I forgot? If I don't call you, does that mean I'm not going to do it? Or, so like if you leave that open, it can set up sort of frustration, disappointment where it's like, God damn it, she was supposed to call me. And you're like, oh, I guess I never heard from him. So I guess we're not doing it. So like, does everybody actually have the same expectation of what's going to happen?
Sure.
And who owes it to who, right? If you're my boss, I probably owe it to you, right? Like, it's probably my job to come to you, say, hey, Brooke, so yeah, turns out I can't do it. But if we're just friends or we're coworkers who are equals, or, like, I don't know who owes it to who, right? Who's doing who a favor here?
I guess it's a token economy, right? I know there's a lot of people out there that think, okay, well, fair is even. What is even? I don't know. But if you have more like chips, right, or cookies in the jar from this person, you're more likely to be the one who's going to try to be more responsible and hold the bag in some areas. It's very nuanced, like you said.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like social capital,
Yeah.
Like, do I owe you or do you owe me? Like, obviously you want to be sort of aware of this. Like, people are finally aware of fairness or lack thereof, So like, you do want to pay attention to who owes who and making it up to people if you need to and whatever. But there's definitely a thing that can happen. And again, this is probably a bit more true for women than men, but kind of this thing of like feeling like you're always behind, like you always owe people, and therefore being willing to tolerate some kind of crappy behavior or some snarky attitude or whatever more than you should.
That's a really good topic. And I'm glad you went there, because it's not only an ADHD thing, being the woman in a family and a household. I have caught myself over and over overextending myself. And I feel like even when my energy tank is slightly like it has some gas in it, I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that extra thing.
Sure.
Yes, I have ADHD, but almost every single client I deal with, or just people in general, my friends who are women who don't have ADHD, like, we are overextenders, we are overaccommodators. What is that about us? What makes us that way?
I think it's just that intersection of being raised as a girl and, what is expected of you. And, in the sense that like women are still the kind of caretaker and coordinator of the family. So I think some of it is that. And I think some of it is that thing of feeling like you're always sort of a bit behind, where there's that worry of like, I don't know if they like me. If I don't do this, they won't like me. So, there's always that kind of like, I don't know, skirting disaster kind of thing. We're skirting rejection, so one way to protect yourself from it, which is true, is to overdo, right? Make sure that you do enough to balance the scales, and then people will keep you around.
Yeah. Wow. So how would you say then you would recommend in the book or in some of the work that you do, women with ADHD drop the people pleasing or slow it down a little bit?
Yeah. Or just balance it out. I think there's a lot that goes into it. I think the first thing is to just sort of recognize that you're doing it, and to recognize that, like, I don't know, just sort of deserving good treatment is just a basic idea. Like, it doesn't need to be revolutionary. It's just sort of a thing. Like, you deserve to be treated well, like, just cause. So I think some of it is that, and that's kind of easy to say and all, but I think some of it is that. I think it's, a matter of, in some ways, genuinely doing a better job. So there's fewer of those moments where you're like, oh man, I really did screw that up. That's not inaccurate. Like, that's true. Like, I showed up late and people were inconvenienced and they were mad about it. Like, that is an accurate statement of facts. So less of those moments. But I think also, because nobody's going to be perfect, part of it also is kind of helping them better understand what it means. Speaking simplistically, it's kind of like the thing of like, look, I know I'm late. It's not because I don't care. And I promise you, I'm like very aware of your time. I just suck at being on time. Like, I've always struggled. Believe it or not, this is actually me working really hard at it. I promise you, this is indeed important to me. So don't read anything into it.
And it's also acknowledging the other person's feelings. Like, I know you're
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
you're not apologizing, but you're acknowledging, like, I know this is probably going to impact you. And
Yeah.
I just want to get in front of it and recognize that our friendship's important to me. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I appreciate you putting up with it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe even right beforehand, like when it gets set up, to say, like, I think I can be there by 3, but here's the thing. Don't leave until I'm going to send you a text when I'm in the car. Like, don't leave until I do.
I love that.
Address it beforehand. Some making it up to people, I think, is fine. Like, I know I was late. Let me get you a coffee. Like, that's fine, right? Some sort of token gift that like balances the scales. Fine. Like, that's socially appropriate, but don't overdo it. Like, don't buy him a lobster because you were late. Don't over apologize, or you're apologizing too much, because then it feels weird to the other person. And then they feel a responsibility to make you feel better about the thing that you messed up that affected them. So it's like, okay, wait a second. First, I had to sit here for 35 minutes. Now I need to like bend over backwards to make you not feel so bad about it. Like, that's a double lose, So like,
ooh, that's a good one. You don't think about that when you're the apologizer. You think that it's just, and I don't know what you feel, but I know when I've apologized, it's because I genuinely felt bad, but I didn't know that I was putting that on the other person as well. So a double whammy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the right amount of apology. Too little apology is bad. Too much is bad. Just right is great, right? So it's like showing genuinely, I get it. I understand how I affected you, but it's not sort of going on and on about it, because that's when it feels like it becomes the other person's emotional work to take care of you.
That makes a lot of sense. And there were so many thoughts and feelings while you were talking, and I wanted to say so many things, but why do you think so many ADHD friendly strategies work the first few times and then fizzle out?
Sure. Yeah, because everything's interesting once, So some of it, I think, is that, like, and genuinely novelty is helpful. Like, it is. And that's fine. It just means kind of recognizing that, the hard part is not using the strategy the first time. The hard part is using it the 5th time.
Yeah.
So maybe what it means is this wasn't actually that great a strategy to begin with. It was a 3 times good strategy, but not a ever after good strategy, So
yeah. It's interesting that you say that. So I know that urgency, novelty, challenge, interest, all are things that hold true for an ADHD, but I'm glad that you said that, because everyone, all the influencers out there and all the memes out there is like, oh, just buy another planner or whatever, right? But I have to promise you that I've been using the same planner for 5 years and it's worked for me every week. And I have ADHD, right? I don't want a prize. I don't want to be recognized for this, but I think I figured out a way for it to work with my brain. And going back to the avoidance piece, I know if I don't use it, I'm going to be stressed, anxious. I'm going to start missing appointments. I'm going to start double booking. So it is possible for everyone listening out there, I just want to say it, that you can stick to a system for longer than 4 weeks or a planner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of it is sort of, it's really sort of committing to it and saying, this is important. I really need to put in the effort. And absolutely, there are going to be times where I'm tempted not to. Where am I going to start to fall off the tracks? Like, let's think about this before I even get there, right? Like, what are the likely scenarios where I may not do the thing?
Good point. Go on vacation.
Yeah. Like, what do I tell myself, right? So if we take your planner thing, where you're like running late on a client appointment, you're like, okay, cool, I'll see you next Tuesday at 3. But then you're like, I don't have time right now, or I'll write it down later. Like, no, that right there, that is where I get myself into trouble. So like, I'm going to force myself to take it 2 seconds and I'm writing it in now. Or other stuff. It's that kind of classic thing, right? You don't use your planner for a day and you're like, well, there it is. It's hopeless. I'm not meant for planners. and then like you don't use it again, right? So kind of being black and white about it versus recognizing, I'm not going to be 100% about it, but that's fine. I just need to use it more than not.
Right. Getting rid of that rigid thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting rid of that, like, well, I've tried everything, nothing works. Everything works 3 times and then never again. So, just sort of resigning yourself to it. But also maybe kind of trying to figure out like, okay, so when I use it, why do I keep using it? What keeps me engaged in doing it, especially when I don't really feel like it? How do I sort of talk myself into? How do I set myself up versus the times where I fall off of it? What happens there? Like, what does this teach me? How do I understand this? So, and we can take anything, but we use a planner example, right? Having your day overbooked and scrambling from one thing to the next is a good way to not take the time to say, hold on a second, let me look at my schedule.
Yes.
For certain things, depending on what you're doing at the time, maybe you need not a paper planner, but you also need to set an alarm on your phone. Or maybe there's just certain things you don't do at certain times. So I don't know, if you need to leave in 10 minutes, maybe like jumping into some like awesome YouTube channel or whatever, like maybe this isn't the thing to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of this other stuff that goes around it, which is going to make it a little bit more likely or a little bit less likely. And I always think about kind of how do you tip the odds a little bit rather than guarantee, rather than 100%, rather than always going to work, because life isn't that simple. But like, what are the little things I can do to make this a little bit more likely?
I like that. So you have that backup plan and you have the foresight to know like this isn't going to work 100% of the time. So how can we plan for those challenges ahead of time? And at the same time, how can we have metacognition where we actually do have a moment to reflect on what's working and what's not? And you mentioned the overscheduling thing. It goes back to that negative messaging that so many of these high achieving ADHDers have, where they think they have to be overscheduled or they're not successful. And I really believe, and you can prove me wrong on this, that in order to be successful with ADHD, if you want balance, not, you want to be an inventor and all you want to do is invent, right? And that's all you're going to do, right? But in order to be successful and balance, knock yourself out. That's not for me. But in order to have balance, you have to cut things out and you have to have boundaries and you have to underschedule from the overscheduling that you've already committed to.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you on this, that, being productive, as much as it's about what are the things I am going to do and how do I do them better, there's also a big piece of this, which is, and what am I not doing? Yeah. Right? Still only 24 hours. So what am I not doing? Or what originally was a pretty good idea, but other things have happened and it just, other things took precedence, or maybe stupid things took precedence, but here we are, right? And at this moment, it isn't the thing to do. So knowing how to sort of cut things loose, knowing how to let things go, knowing how to not be the eternal optimist, like, oh, I can't take that off my to-do list. I might get to it, right? Or like, I was going to do something with this. I have to keep it. Like maybe
it's okay to let it go,
but also no. So like, that's part of it too. And it's not just the sort of guilt of every time you look at it, it's a little knife in your heart. But it's also kind of cognitively, it's distracting. It's harder to think about this stuff that's actually worth doing when there's all this other crap that kind of gets in the way and just is kind of like, oh, I forgot about that because that was on page 3 of my to-do list and I never look at that.
All the shiny new things, I try. Doesn't always work. But I try to put it on a 30-day list. Like, let me just sit on this thing for 30 days, then come back to it, then talk to someone I trust, maybe my assistant, then look at my schedule and see where I'm going to fit it in. So if alternative, right, if you have that shiny new thing and you put it on your list and you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to wait those 30 days and it keeps rolling over. Maybe that shiny new thing isn't as pressing as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's kind of like having an aspirational to-do list as opposed to like your active working list. Like, here's stuff I'm actually doing today. Yes. Versus it's like, the Netflix queue of like, I would someday like to do this. Great. But it doesn't need to be mixed in there with like, finished sorting receipts for taxes or something.
Exactly. Okay. So I know we're coming up to an end here. So what would you say, Ari, one thing that you would like to leave the audience with who's listening that is just revolutionary, life-changing, that they have to do, they have to think about?
Right. I think what I would say is take the time to really sort of debrief and think about what happened, right? If something did work, why did it work? And if it didn't work, why didn't it work? But to go beyond the first obvious answers, right? Because those are easy. Like, you can whip those out, like they're well-worn, the deal. But like, really, really, what else was going on there? Like, what sort of contributed? I kind of sometimes say, like, what are the first dominoes? So like we gave the example, like the brushing your teeth example. If you crawl up to bed too late, you're less likely to brush your teeth. So like, it's really about getting up there earlier. But okay, well, but why didn't you get up there earlier? Well, I didn't do things earlier in the day, so I was doing them at night. Okay, so it's not about the night, it's about the day. What happened during the day that you weren't getting done the things you needed to do, right? So like, sometimes we need to kind of go back a few extra steps to figure out like, what are the better points of intervention? Kind of like back to the sort of alcoholic at the bar, right? It's not, the interesting part of the conversation is not, so man, tell me what happened when your ass was on the bar stool, right? Like, tell me, how did you even get there in the first place? How did you think that this was going to be a good idea? What happened before that? And what happened before that? What happened, like, because that's really where the story begins. So it's the same thing with ADHD. It's the same thing with any human facing temptation and distraction in the world. Sometimes we need to kind of rewind a little bit more to figure out what some of those other possibly more powerful points of intervention are.
I like that. Thank you, Ari, for being on and sharing some amazing strategies from your book and just, getting into some life hacks and general conversation about women and goals and ADHD versus neurotypicals. I know we can talk for hours. We haven't even got into half of the questions I was going to ask you. Yeah. But where can someone find you if they're looking for more information or they want to find your book?
Sure. So best place is adultadhdbook.com. That's my website. I've got information on all of my books, including the new ADHD productivity manual.
So good. What a great domain name. Kudos to you.
AdultADHDbook.com.
He took it, guys. You can't take that. I love it. All right. Well, Ari, thanks again for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.